Let's talk about all of the things that we made, that we bought, that we used up, and all of the plans that we're not quite achieved for last month. It's December, and that means that it is time for our monthly haul and review and roundup to see all of the great things that happened last month. So we're going to start with some of the things that we made and talk a little bit about those. Now, most of last month was actually taken up with creating this celosia top. This was a little bit of a nightmare for me. I frogged it 3 times when I was like up to this level. It's kind of a top or a bottom up work. So once I got to about here, I'm like, oh, wait, that's too big. I better frog it and go down a size and adjust my hook size and all of those things. And I gotta tell you that even after frogging it, I went down 2 hook sizes and I went down a body size. So I went from the large to the medium. It's still way too big for me. Let me show you. Yeah, it's huge. I mean, it's supposed to have this nice little drape here, but even down here at the bottom, it's way, way, way too big. So I have a few theories on why it ended up too big for me.
Oh, you do you?
One, I think because I had to frog it so many times, I actually think that the yarn started to get a little bit thinner as I went. I could be wrong about that. That could just be my uneducated opinion, but I do think that the yarn got bigger. This is blocked, so I did, I did wash it and then block it, which obviously made it even bigger than it was before I blocked it. But I don't know. I mean, I did a gauge swatch before I started, and while I did go down, I think in a hook size, and I had to kind of finagle the stitch a little bit to make sure that I got there. I did get the gauge, but I think because I had to finagle it a little bit, that as I went through the process and I'm sitting in front of the TV, I'm not paying attention to doing that finagling. So I think that might have had an effect on it, as well as the fact that I've realized I have this tendency, up to this point anyway, I do my gauge swatches sitting in front of my computer where I'm paying attention to what the gauge swatch size needs to be and everything. And that means I'm paying a lot more attention to the tension and what I'm doing and everything like that. Whereas when I'm usually doing that kind of a crochet, I'm sitting in front of the TV and I'm not paying a tremendous amount of attention to what I'm doing. So it's going to be a very different result from one experience to another. My mother-in-law shares a story, and I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this, but when she was in chemo, her stitch tension, if she was going through chemo in that moment, would get really, really tight. So she had to pay attention to what project she was working on when she was actually going through chemo versus what project she was working on when she was just in that recovery sort of phase between the chemo treatments. That had a big, big, big factor on her tension. So the lesson for me here is, and hopefully you can kind of learn from some of that experience, is that changing up your environment can really change up your tension and how you're crocheting. So it's really kind of important to do some gauge swatches while you're in that environment. And my mother-in-law also gave me the tip to check your gauge halfway through the project. So, or not halfway through, but after you've gotten started, you've kind of got that flow going, then take a section of your project and measure it to see if you're meeting gauge then. Because you're not so far along that you can't just frog it back, but it's going to give you a much more accurate measure of gauge than when you're actually paying attention to doing the gauge swatch. So So those are some good tips that I learned. I do have a hole in this that I could easily seam up, but to be honest with you, I'm pretty sure that I'm gonna frog this. I was thinking that I might like to gift it to somebody. I can't think of too terribly many people in my world that I would want to gift a sweater like this that are on that larger size, that this would actually look really nice on them. I honestly, I love the pattern. Maybe I'll just frog it and do it one more time. I don't know. I had high hopes to have this ready for Thanksgiving so that I could wear it for Thanksgiving. And I think maybe some of that pressure caused me not to pay too much attention to things. And because I was getting frustrated with the fact that I had to keep frogging it. It was just, don't put that pressure on yourself. Let yourself off the hook.
So you're off the hook.
Yeah, that didn't go so well. I did not wear it for Thanksgiving because I am not in love with it. But again, I actually do kind of like the style and the shape of it. So maybe if I just frog it and start it over and don't put the time pressure on myself and pay attention to a few of those things, maybe, and start over with a gauge swatch from the very beginning. Or heck, I could probably just look at this and do a gauge swatch from this and say how many rows. That might be a good idea. So fortunately, there are not a lot of cuts and knots in the pattern. It's pretty much done in the round, so it'll be really easy to overall to frog it and keep the yarn without having to have a lot of extra knots in it. So that was the big project that I finished in November, and it was not fun. I started to lose my crojo because I was working so hard on this, and I just got burnt out. I'm like, I need to finish this. But the way that I tend to work, if I have a bigger project like this, I like to also do short, quick win projects in between that make me feel like I'm mixing it up, giving myself some variety, not really having to, oh my God, I gotta get this done. But because I had such a tight deadline and I had to start over so many times, I was not giving myself that opportunity to change up the projects periodically. And so I really started to almost resent the sweater. And for that reason, maybe I won't make it again. We'll have to see. Maybe I need to do it in a different color or something that's totally different, just to kind of give myself a fresh vibe. But once I finished this, and I did have a couple of projects that I did sort of midway through. The first one that I did, or one of the ones that I did, I crocheted another jar opener for my niece for her birthday, and I did it in her colors. I actually used black yarn, which I used black yarn twice this month, or last month, kind of crazy. So that I already gifted her. So this is mine. This is the one that I use as an example because I keep it in my drawer in my kitchen. But I did make one of those. That was super quick and easy. I mean, these take me maybe an hour. And if I get faster, I could probably do it faster. But I also took this as an inspiration to solve a problem. My dogs have those puzzle bowls to kind of slow down their eating. The problem is that one of them, her puzzle bowl ends up all over the kitchen. It is like the part of the puzzle is just keeping the bowl in one place. And we were trying to eliminate or reduce the amount of around the kitchen movement that the bowl got. So I made a larger version as a dog mat. So I can put this on the floor, and because it has a little bit of a grippiness to it, I can put her dog bowl on top of this. And she usually kind of puts her paws, right on the edge, which then really helps when she's doing that. It's not perfect. And you can see there's some dust and fuzz on here because I actually pulled this right off the floor. It is not perfect, but it definitely reduces the amount of wiggle that her dog bowl gets. So it did, for the most part, solve that problem. I love using crochet to solve problems. I think that's brilliant. I think it's one of the best things about crochet. And then, uh, if you saw my Christmas tree video, which I'll link to up here, you know that I have been planning on making a bunch of Christmas trees for my Christmas village since last year. I finally finished one. I mean, I did have this one, but this one was just kind of a, let me see, I've got this extra weird, funky yarn. I want to see what I can do. But this time I followed a pattern, and I'll link to the pattern because I can't remember. It's from Bag a Day Crochet, and I think she's got a video tutorial for it. It's actually a really easy pattern once you kind of get past the very tip top. It's a little finicky at the top, but once you get past that, it's really easy. I actually wove in the garland afterwards. This is just another piece of yarn that kind of has, I don't know if you can see it, but it's got little pieces of glitter on it. And so it kind of gives it a little bit of a shiny effect. But this actually fits on a cone. So you're not making, it's not stuffed, it actually just kind of goes down like that. So you can make it as long as you need to. Now I modified the pattern just a little bit so that it didn't get as wide as I went. I didn't do the increases when she did towards the bottom, just so that the width didn't quite get as wide and it would fit that cone a little bit better. And I think this came out great. I love, love, love this tree. And I'll put a picture up here. I think it looks fabulous in my little Christmas village that's on my bar. So that is another project I completed. And I used Heartland, Lion Brand's Heartland in Kings Canyon is the color that I used for that. So that was a lot of fun. And I'll probably make a few more of those. I don't know if I'll do them this year, which we'll come to shortly, but I definitely have more cones and I can make more trees. And I might just make them to decorate other places of the house too. But I think that's a great, I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay. I also have planned, while I live in Arizona, I live in Phoenix. It rarely gets below 60 degrees here.
So they say it's a dry heat.
But I do occasionally go further north where it does get cold. And so I made this shawl slash cowl. I don't really know what to call it because it's not long enough to be a shawl. And I plan on wearing it like a cowl, but I wanted the triangle shape to highlight the pattern of the yarn. This yarn is Lion Brand Shawl in a Ball, which is discontinued, I found out. And I was gifted this. Somebody wasn't using it, so they gave it to me. I love purple. So this is, hopefully you heard that. I didn't realize I was covering the mic. I love purple, and this is a beautiful colorway. So I might use the rest of the skein to make a hat similar to this one, so that I sort of have a match set. We'll see. I'm not sure yet. Thinking about it. I have a lot of ideas for this month. And I made a gift for my best friend's daughter. She lives in Prescott. And so I made her this ear warmer, and I'll put the link to the pattern in the comments or in the description below, but here's who made that. I can't remember right off the top of my head. Now I did modify it by scrunching it so that it's more of that, has the scrunch, in it. And then I made a flower for it too. Her favorite colors are black and dark green. Now, hopefully this dark green is dark enough. This is kind of an olive green. When I take pictures of it and showed it to her, her mom was like, it's a little light, but I think maybe just that's the way it came across in the picture. So I'm hoping that this is a pretty enough, but if she doesn't like the flower, I just tied it on in a bow so she can take that off and get rid of it. So, and still wear the ear warmer. So that is what I completed this month. And with that, I used 19 grams of cotton in Big Twist Sahara. That was for this. I used 38 grams of the Lion Brand Heartland. That was for the tree. I used 39 grams of the Queensland Collection Kathmandu for the ear warmer. And I used 75 grams of the shawl in a ball. And I used 400 grams for this top. In addition, I used a little bit extra for the jar opener and the flower and for, just a few miscellaneous things here and there that didn't use up a quantifiable amount, or they were more like scrap yarn kind of quantities. So with that, I used approximately 600 grams of yarn last month, in November. However, I did take advantage of the November Black Weeks sale from Hobby. Yes. And Knit Picks had their $2, $4, $6 a skein sale, which I took advantage of. You can see what I got here. But the increase on that was I purchased 2,800 grams.
So justify your decision.
And now, granted, I was taking advantage of the sales, and like it says in that video, I saved a lot of money. So I was sort of stocking up. That was my plan, is to say, hey, give myself some variety of things that I can use for several months, and hopefully I won't need to buy as much as we go. Now, there are a few things I'll still have to buy along the way, but I'm hoping to sort of reduce the amount that I purchase every month because I stocked up. Fingers crossed. We'll see. We'll see if that works out. That was the goal. That means that I increased my stash by 2,200 grams of yarn. Sheesh. Yeah. Okay. Now, I did also start the Lease sweater for my granddaughter. I'm working on that, and I've had to frog that a couple of times because the first one I did, I think my tension is a little tight on that. And it just, like, I measured it and I'm like, this is going to be really tight on her. It would be fine if it wasn't a pullover sweater, but I don't want her struggling to get it on and off because then she won't wear it. So I would rather it big as opposed to too small. So I'm kind of playing around with that a little bit. Then my plan is to finish that up for sure. It's a fast working project. So I probably will have that done in 3 or 4 days, I would guess. Finish that up. I also found this amazing pattern for dragon scale slippers, and my granddaughter right now is obsessed with dragons. So I am definitely going to make these for her as long as I can figure out the pattern. I might make the matching hat to go with this, and I might make another cowl. I don't know. I used to hate cowls. I used to think, ugh, I don't want to, things around my neck. But I'm learning that I can make them loose enough so that they just add character without me feeling like I need to have something right here on my neck. And it's a great way to dress up a plain t-shirt or a dressier shirt that doesn't have a big print on it, something like that. So maybe I'm changing my mind about cowls. And yeah, they might be a lot more fun. So I have a lot of different ideas, and I'm not creating a hard plan, because one of the things, the first few days after doing a big project like this, I'm like, what do I want to start? What do I want to figure out? How much time do I want to spend actually trying to figure out the pattern, versus do I just want a mindless project that I can just whip up and not have to think too much about? I'm kind of in that post project analysis paralysis where I don't really know what I want to do next. And I have a lot of things that I want to do. I'm not sure that this is the month that I want to get them started, because I'm just feeling a little bit overwhelmed with everything else in life. So I may just, knock out a couple of those projects that I've been looking at, but then find something easy to do. And I don't know what that is yet, but just something that doesn't take a lot of thought. I know I could do a blanket, but I don't have enough yarn for that. If you have ideas, let me know in the comments. I'd love to know what you're going to be working on this month. And if you like this kind of content, make sure that you hit that like button, because that's what tells YouTube the algorithm is working for you, and it shows it to more people, which is a great little kind of currency for me. And of course, subscribe if you haven't already, so that you always have great content to watch when you're working on your next crochet project. And if you have ideas what I should do for this, should I frog it, or should I remake it, or should I gift it? What the heck should I do with it? It's supposed to have positive ease, but I don't think it's supposed to have like 1.5 feet of positive ease. So yeah, that's what we're doing with it. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you next week.